Huge news today. Former All-Pro, Chiefs great, Chiefs legend, Trent McDuffie, traded to the Los Angeles Rams for a haul of draft picks, the 29th overall pick in this draft. So first rounder, they're at the end of the first round. The Rams natural naked pick. They also have a 13th overall pick from the Falcons for some reason. Fifth round pick this year, sixth round pick this year, 2027 third round pick, eerily similar to the emergency podcast we did 4 years ago when the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill for almost an identical haul, including the 29th overall pick. And that was the draft. Obviously, the Chiefs ended up with Trent McDuffie. So the Chiefs bid adieu to a former All Pro. We had to do an emergency podcast about it.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Definitely a pillar of the Chiefs defense over the last 4 years, arguably, and maybe not even that arguably their best player. People would say Chris Jones, but certainly Trent McDuffie was an all pro. He was as good as it gets in the slot. They moved him outside where he was pretty successful too. Just a dog. He's a guy that was I mean, he's going to get a new deal with the Rams and be the highest paid corner in football. And I mean, he worked his ass off. He deserves that type of big contract. The Chiefs just weren't able to fit that type of contract in their books. So they get a haul of draft picks for him. It's a fun full circle moment. He was, like you said, part of the big haul that they got in the Tyreek Hill trade. And now he goes away and they get a lot of picks in return and they can reload.
They could sign Tyreek Hill, bring him back. He's a free agent. Yeah, before we get into kind of the ramifications for the Chiefs, I think it's worth pointing out that from my perspective, and I'm sure from Trent McDuffie's perspective, this was a great destination for him. I mean, you're talking about a
Yeah.
team that played in the Final Four, that recently won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, that has a great core of talent, one of the best coaches, if not the best coach currently in the NFL, and Sean McVay. This is Trent McDuffie's hometown. He's reuniting with his collegiate DB coach.
Mhm.
Like this is I mean, it remains to be seen. The Chiefs have to hold up their end of the deal by hitting on some of these draft picks, obviously, as is always the case when you have a player for draft capital trade. This is a great trade for the Rams and for Trent McDuffie, and really for us as fans. I mean, I know you and I both really enjoy watching the Rams. They're a team
Yeah.
that doesn't like their success doesn't affect the Chiefs at all. If they were to win another Super Bowl with Matt Stafford isn't, no one's going to say that the Rams or Matt Stafford or whoever, nobody's going to compare them to the Chiefs. It doesn't affect our legacy. It doesn't affect our standing in the grand scheme of things. It's a very attractive destination for us. And we do have to see Trent McDuffie this year. The Chiefs do play the Rams, but
Sure.
other than that, I mean, he may not even be a Ram when we see them again 4 years from now. So, from that perspective, it seems like a really successful and attractive trade from the Rams perspective, from Trent McDuffie's perspective, and from a Chiefs fan perspective, at least in terms of being able to see him go to, a contender, and a place that he's very familiar with and with coaches that he's familiar with and should be able to have a lot of success.
It's very palatable. Absolutely. There are a lot of things to like about sending one of your best players to the other conference in general. Um, you play everybody eventually. So like we were going to play Trent McDuffie, but what we didn't want to do was play him every year or play him twice a year. I mean,
Right.
they'd never do that, but I like sending him to the Rams. I like rooting for the Rams in the NFC over pretty much the majority of the NFC teams. Love to see him beat up on the 49ers and the Eagles and all those idiots over there. So yeah, it's a good situation for Trent. Absolutely. And you would imagine that if the Chiefs approached Trent in the trade talk or in the negotiations for a new contract or whatever, and they just said, "Hey, if we're going to work out a deal to move you, pick a team and we'll try and make it work." I'm sure he would have said the Rams. Like I think that's his number one destination. Like you said, homecoming and all the good vibes that come with the Rams. They're a well-run organization. Hilariously, they hate first-round picks. They
Yeah. Yeah.
drafted Jared Goff one overall in 2016, and then they've only used one other first-round pick since 2016, which was in 2024 on Jared Verse, who's a very good player. So they
Yeah.
did
Right.
great there. But they just, I mean, they have this 13th overall pick right now. And who knows if they're out there trying to dangle it in front of another team to get some more cool players instead of picking someone that I mean, they won a Super Bowl in 2021 and they haven't had a first round pick. They hadn't had a first round pick since 2016 that year. So
Right.
it's
Right.
it's a team that knows how to build by flipping their high draft capital for good impact players. And, they've got it on the books to be able to pay Trent McDuffie a lot of money. And I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the Rams, and especially, as we'll talk about, very happy for the Chiefs.
Yeah, let's talk about the contract because that obviously is what motivated this move. It's the same move that motivated Tyreek Hill. Interesting parallel because Trent McDuffie wants to reset the cornerback market, which is currently the record is Sauce Gardner at 30.1 million APY. And that's what Tyreek Hill wanted 4 years ago when he wanted to reset the wide receiver market was $30 million a year. The Chiefs said, thanks, but no thanks. We can't afford that with the way that this roster is constructed. Obviously, they have a superstar quarterback on a superstar quarterback contract. Um, so it wasn't inevitable. I don't want to make it sound like that. Like obviously,
Yeah.
$30 million a year for a cornerback that has had success inside and outside, but it sounds like he personally would rather play outside as a boundary corner. And it seems like the Chiefs really preferred not to play him there because he was so effective in the slot. Obviously, that's a that's a valuable position in the modern NFL. But $30 million a year was not something that the Chiefs probably were going to be able to do. And it's interesting because I mean, even up until a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people connected to the organization still I think we're of the mindset that hey this is going to get done. I mean I think when we were talking to our friend Charles Goldman a year ago
Mhm.
right before the season started, he had the article ready to go with the Trent McDuffie extension and everything he was hearing from inside the organization suggested that they were going to get an extension done with Trent and Nate Taylor, the other Chiefs beat reporters, I think everybody was kind of sending out that same vibe. And then there was this tension between what we were hearing from all these really well connected reporters, well connected with the team, and the fact that could the Chiefs really afford to pay a cornerback $30 million with the roster holes and needs that they have, and it really didn't make a lot of sense.
No.
So here we are. We've arrived at the trade. The trade makes a lot of practical sense, and we could second guess some of the other moves on the roster: Nick Bolton, Trey Smith. Whether George Karlaftis, whether that money from one or more of those players might have been better spent or better allocated towards retaining a player like Trent McDuffie. But you can't really quibble with the move from either a salary cap relief standpoint or from a draft compensation standpoint.
No, no, not at all. It made perfect football business decisions. It was something that, especially like you also think about where the Chiefs are as an organization right now. There's a big difference between making this move when they made the Tyreek Hill move, which
Yeah.
was after 2021, when they had won a Super Bowl in 19, they lost a Super Bowl in 20, they lost the AFC Championship game in 21, then they flipped Tyreek Hill. I mean, I guess I say that, and now you're looking at won the Super Bowl in 23, won a
Right.
Super Bowl in 24, lost the Super Bowl in 25, and then you trade Trent McDuffie. So in that sense, they've been very successful in the couple years before they made these trades both times. However, to me, as just kind of the vibe of the organization, I feel much different about the direction of the team today than I did in 2021 when they traded Tyreek Hill. I feel like they they are floundering right now in a way that they just weren't back then. Now we thought it was dark times back then when they lost that game to Cincinnati, and you just thought, how are they ever going to get back to the mountaintop? But at the end of the day, they still had a high flying offense. They still had a lot of things that we could point to and say this is why they'd get back. Right now, they're in flux. They just went 6-11. They obviously have Mahomes with a knee injury. They've got a lot of kind of question marks, and so to reload at this time, get another first round pick, get some cap space, get some breathing room in free agency. It makes a lot of sense. It's something that the team, they look like they're about to have the most active off season that, at least it may be in the Mahomes era that we can remember, based on the moves, the coaching decisions, all the different stuff that's gone on so far with the team. And I'm here for it. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I actually think that the parallel between this trade and where the Chiefs were at in 2022 is a really interesting one because on the one hand, obviously the Chiefs record this year was much worse than what it was in 2021. On the other hand, that 2021 season was a hard season in a lot of ways too. We've talked about it before. Before the last couple of years, that was easily the worst regular season the Chiefs had endured in the Patrick Mahomes era. And that team really was fairly lost until the playoffs. And then
Mhm.
it returned in the second half of the AFC Championship game against the Bengals, and kind of fell apart there. But I'm not sure that the teams are actually in that different of a place, even though the record would suggest that they are. And obviously, that team made the AFC Championship game. This team didn't make the playoffs. I get that. But I actually think that they're not that different. Number one, because I don't think the 2025 team was as bad as their record. We talked about that. They lost every game, every one score game they played in,
Yeah.
like that's basically impossible. The quarterback got hurt, obviously, with, a quarter of the season left to go, and they probably weren't going to make the playoffs at that point, but they weren't going to finish 6-11 if Mahomes stays
Correct.
healthy and if he's still competing. You know, um, didn't have Rasheed Rice for the first 6 games,
Mhm.
dealt with the injury to Worthy. Just a lot of extenuating circumstances. And I do think that the coaching was bad. And you touched on that, alluded to that. This is the biggest overhaul of the coaching staff that we've seen really in the Mahomes era, which I do think is a positive. But I think I saw Zach Eisen make this point on Twitter today that it feels like 2022 you could sell that as a retooling, whereas this feels like more of a hard rebuild. I'm not sure I agree with that.
Mm.
Like I the thing about the offense in 2022 is, yeah, it was really good in 2022. Mahomes won the MVP. Kelsey had an awesome year. That was like the last prime Kelsey season that we got.
Yep.
They were the best offense in the league. They won the Super Bowl. But that offense really was in need of retooling in 2022. And they
Mhm.
made it work for one more year to incredible effect. Got rid of Tyreek Hill, didn't add a lot of pieces. Creed was in that group. Um, Rasheed didn't come in until 2023. They were getting it done with Patrick Mahomes, Travis
Juju.
Kelsey, and a box of scraps. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. But that offense needed retooling even in 2022. Like they did need to retool both sides of the ball in 2022. They made it work, and they obviously then won back-to-back Super Bowls. We saw a ton of success there. But I don't know that that team was in that different of a place than they're in now. And obviously, that situation is apt because Tyreek Hill is the last time the Chiefs had two first round picks. They're picking their first pick is now number nine. It's the first time they picked in the top 10 in the Andy Reid era,
Since
anywhere close there. Well, that's sure, but
Pat
they
was
had to
10.
trade up for Pat.
Well,
But
right. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they already have the ninth overall pick. They're in range to trade up into the top five if they want to now. I don't know whether that would be a wise decision or not, but with Brett Veach, you just never know what he's going to do on draft night. So I'm not sure that they're in that different of a place. Now, I think that the approach has to be a little bit different because the life cycle of the team is a little bit different. The injury to Pat obviously casts a pall over everything. And I think that's really responsible for a lot of the ill feeling about all this stuff and the
Yeah.
record, obviously, too. But I don't know that the team is that far away. Now, they're going to have to obviously hit on some picks and they're going to have to do some work in free agency. But maybe we can talk a little bit about that because this saves the Chiefs a lot of money with the other moves that have been made over the last couple of weeks. And we've got free agency coming on Monday. The Chiefs have some money to play around with, and they have a lot of draft capital to play around with. I saw Warren Sharp tweeted this is the most draft capital the Chiefs had since 2008.
Yeah. And the fourth most of any team in football this year, which is a big deal. That's, when you look at where the Chiefs ranked over the past couple years in just draft capital compared to their peers, compared to the other teams that were out there trying to catch up to the Chiefs, trying to, go win Super Bowls just like the Chiefs were, the rankings were pretty rough. If you go backwards in time before this year's fourth, it was 24th, 30th, 24th. They did have the ninth most in 2022, the last time they retooled with the two first round draft picks, and
Right.
then 30, 26, 30, 30 up till 2018. So
Well, and look at what the 2022 draft was. I mean, look what they did with that draft capital in
they won two
2022.
Super Bowls by doing that. I mean, they absolutely slammed that draft out of the park, and I mean, it was it was the last time they had this much capital. So you look at space, you look at cap space is another part of the equation other than just draft capital, which they now have a good amount of. And space wise, depending on if you check over the cap or spot rack or whatever, they're checking in at about 23 million, 24 million, depending on what contracts have officially, been picked up by those services. And the savings, they were, if you remember, very under the cap going into this offseason, even without a lot of players on contract. They were 30 or $40 million over the cap with like 50 something players on the roster. So it was a pretty rough situation, but you've got the McDuffie trade here. It's 13.6 million off the cap. The Mahomes restructure. There's always money in the banana stand for Patrick Mahomes, and that was the big saver that I'm sure the Chiefs. One of the reasons they were comfortable being that much over the cap going into the years because they knew they had some savings there, and that's 43.6 million that the Chiefs saved by restructuring Pat. And then smaller moves will be like Mike Dana was $9 million cut off the cap, and then Juwan Taylor, who was just told the last couple of days that he would be cut. That was $20 million in what it's probably the top 2 or 3 worst decisions in the Brett Veach era was the
Yeah.
Juwan Taylor contract. I mean, certainly right up there with Frank Clark and some of the other situations. But that all that money means that the Chiefs now have 25 million dollars, and they have a big dangling carrot out in front of them in the form of big number 95 Chris Jones. There was a report today on Twitter from I don't know how much Evan Sidri, how much cachet he has with the masses, but he's the one that has been kind of spreading that the Chiefs will reportedly restructure Chris Jones's contract in the very near future, creating an additional 22.5 million in cap space. That would put us close to $50 million in cap space. And now you're looking at, okay, they've got the fourth most draft capital. Good. They've got $50 million to spend in free agency. Good. And game breaking players that are not on the roster anymore that were last year is basically Trent McDuffie. Like,
Right.
it's not really like they had to just burn the whole thing to the ground to rebuild. So the full rebuild to me is more like they sold everything. They got rid of, it was a fire sale, and they had to just say, okay, whatever anybody will take. We've seen plenty of sports teams rebuild over the years, and it means going down to the foundations, down to the ground. And that's not what this Chiefs team did. They smartly cut some dead weight and some guys that were expensive but not performing, and then they traded their one big blue chip prospect that they weren't going to be able to sign for $30 million anyway. So it's a pretty good situation going into the offseason this year.
Yeah, and it should not be lost on anybody, and it hasn't been lost on Chiefs fans, but I have been surprised at the number of national pundits that have sort of overlooked this. Sam Monson, who I really like, his kind of initial reaction to the trade was like, well, now you have this huge hole at cornerback, and like, you kind of got to spend a first round pick on cornerback. No, you don't.
No,
I mean, Trent
no.
McDuffie
Have you
is the
seen all of our
only.
cornerbacks?
Yeah, exactly. Trent McDuffie is the only cornerback that the Chiefs have ever taken above the fourth round, I
Third.
think. Yeah.
Noel
They've
Williams
taken.
was a fourth. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Fourth.
Yeah, I mean, they've taken some safeties and DBs in
Mm-hmm.
the second, third round, and obviously they like the positional flexibility there. But those guys were primarily safeties, and I mean, if there's one position that you would bet your life on the Chiefs nailing in the draft, it's cornerback,
Sure.
and
Or developing,
they
even
have
if it's
exactly,
free
and
agent or
they
a
have
castaway.
yeah, exactly, they have that same infrastructure. All the coaches, Dave Mender's still there, Steve Spagnuolo is still there. They have the same scouting infrastructure, all of that stuff. You have to feel confident in their ability to attack that position. And I mean, we're not even talking about the other cornerback that they took in that draft. They obviously got Nazi Johnson and
Jalen Watson.
Jalen. Well, I was going to say Jalen Watson, but they also took
Oh.
Josh Williams, or yeah, Josh
Oh yeah, Josh
in that
Williams. Mm-hmm.
draft.
Mm-hmm.
But then obviously, I mean, in the seventh round, you got Jalen Watson, who is going to make a ton of money in free agency. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if the Chiefs are interested in retaining him now that McDuffie is gone, but like, he was a seventh round pick. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's a humongous home run
Yes.
for a seventh round pick. And I'm not saying that you're always going to get those guys, but L'Jarius Sneed, the last star cornerback they shipped off, was a fourth round pick. Like, the list of non-premium picks that the Chiefs have turned into premium defensive backs on the field is extremely long. And I get that people have been critical of Brett Veach, and that's fair. I think there definitely are some rightful criticisms one can make as Brett Veach.
Sure.
You can make the criticism that the foundational players on this roster, Pat, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, those were all Dorsey picks.
Sure.
But what you cannot criticize is Brett Veach's ability to draft cornerbacks. Like those are his
Hmm.
hits.
Hmm.
You know, I don't care if he can't draft any other position. He can draft DB. So I'm
Yeah.
not really worried about the Chiefs' ability to replace Trent McDuffie in the aggregate. In the aggregate, it's like the Moneyball thing, right?
Yeah,
Like we can't
totally.
afford McDuffie, but we can replace him in the aggregate.
Do you know who the last Chiefs DB or cornerback, I should say, to get a second contract with the Chiefs was that
I
they
do. I
drafted?
saw this tweet. I do. I saw this tweet. It was
Eric Berry,
Eric Berry. Eric Berry.
2017.
Yeah, and
So
obviously
just,
that predates Brett Veach. That was a Dorsey deal.
yep.
And
Charvarius
apparently,
Ward, and I mean all the guys,
sure, Charvarius
LJ.
Ward, who by the way was an undrafted free agent that they traded
Yes.
for, who then got a
Yes.
monster contract in free agency, which supports your point. I mean, you were saying it's not
Yeah.
even just limited to the draft.
No.
We didn't even draft Charvarius Ward. We
No.
sent I forget which offensive lineman it
Man,
was.
what was that guy's name?
Parker
Uh,
Ehringer, maybe
Parker
somebody like
Ehringer.
that.
Yeah,
Is
you're
that who it
yeah.
was?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's right.
Yeah,
But they
that's
sent
right.
him to the Cowboys for
Yes.
Charvarius Ward, and then they turned him into a starting cornerback and a really damn good one by
A
the time he
dog.
left
Yeah.
the Chiefs, and he got paid a ton of money in free agency, and he's still getting paid a ton of money in
Yes.
free agency. He's
Yes.
making a really good living out there. So yeah, that to me is not a big problem. But I think what's exciting about this is your opportunity with the ninth pick and the 29th pick, and then, another pick in the top 40, you have pick number 40, your ability to attack some positions that you just don't have the opportunity to draft very often. Now,
Mhm.
the caveat being that this is maybe not the greatest draft class to need, edge help or whatever. You're picking ninth overall. Maybe you don't want to draft Ruben Bain because he has little tiny baby arms, like he's got the shortest arms of an edge rusher ever, and I
Yeah.
mean, whatever the situation is, but you've got some opportunities between the draft and between free agency to attack some positions of need that you don't always get, and in fact, not even don't always, but like rarely get the opportunity to address with either a premium free agent signing or a premium draft pick.
Absolutely. It's a big, like, the whole part about the NFL that makes it so great that we've always talked about is the balance, is the that when you suck, you're rewarded, and when you're good, you're punished. And the Chiefs were really good for a long time, and it made this process really difficult. It made it difficult to get a top 10 pick in the draft, or to have all this money and all the stuff that is going, now it's going the Chiefs way because they went 6-11, and they're now a top 10 pick. And I do think that, if it's a bad draft to draft edges, don't draft an edge, but go sign Trey Hendrickson. Go
Sure.
make a big splash. Go do
Go
something
sign
fun.
Odafe Owe, go
Yeah,
go
right.
sign.
Like,
Yeah,
make a
exactly.
make a big deal. Make something happen. And they can now. And they couldn't a lot of times in the Mahomes era. They were just kind of they kept winning the damn Super Bowl. So they were
Right.
like,
Yeah.
well, what can we do? Like, we
Right.
all these guys keep just doing it, even though they shouldn't, and even though we don't really, we're kind of putting this thing together with duct tape and rubber bands, but like, it's working. And now the moment that it stopped working, you see them shifting focus and kind of retooling and getting ready again. And I mean, I'm certainly excited about it. We still have a lot of potential. I mean, I know we'll have a lot of more breaking news and a lot of cool things that are going to happen this offseason, but just this little bit with the McDuffie trade really kind of just got my juices going.
It's a sad day because he was a great Chief
I love Trent
and
McDuffie.
a two-time Super Bowl champion,
Yes.
and you know, uh, just a huge part of the team over the last 4 years. We really appreciate everything Trent McDuffie's done for the team. It is a sad thing, but at the same time, like it is exciting because this is just another in a string of big changes that have come to the team that were needed. Like
Yeah.
for everything that seems to have stagnated over the last couple of years. I mean, I don't think I've made this take on the podcast before, but like I think what we saw in 2025 with the team was just total mental, spiritual, physical, intellectual exhaustion.
Exhaustion.
The
Yeah.
the pursuit of the three-peat, to get so close to it, to fall so dramatically short at the end, and then to have to try and recover from that in all of those realms, mentally, spiritually, physically, intellectually. I just think that they completely emptied the tank in every regard. And,
Hmm.
you know, the reset is needed. The injection of fresh insight and approaches on the coaching staff is needed.
Hmm.
Bringing back Eric Bieniemy, who's just spent a year with the incredible Ben Johnson in Chicago, who is a who is a prick, who is a hard ass, who
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
going to hold people accountable, to show Matt Nagy the door and say, oh, yeah, he's definitely going to get a head coaching
Hmm.
job. But see you, Matt. Yeah, we've already filled your position. Don't come back now.
Ugh.
To do that. But the turnover on the coaching staff across the board has been unlike anything we've seen, certainly in the Mahomes era and probably in the Andy Reid era
Yeah,
in Kansas City. I mean, that's exciting. It's just change can be hard, but change can also be good. And I think this is definitely feels like an exciting change in a string of exciting changes for the Chiefs. And I don't know how much success it will produce this year.
right.
Uh I can no longer expect, that everything will work out. And in that way, it feels a little bit like 2022, right? Because
Uh-huh.
that was the year that the creeping doubts started coming in. Like you were in the Super Bowl, you won the Super Bowl, you won your first Super Bowl in 50 years. You got back to the Super Bowl, it did not go well. You were so close to getting back to the Super Bowl for a third year in a row, which, by the way, at that stage of our lives as a Chiefs fan, still, I mean,
Insane.
like insane. Like
Insane.
that was before we won two more, but it was like,
Yeah.
oh, we can go to the Super Bowl 3 years in a row. We
We're like
we
a
were
Super Bowl
going
team.
we're going to the Super Bowl 3 years in a row at
Yeah.
halftime of the AFC Championship game
Yes.
against the Bengals, and then
Yes.
for that to fall apart the way that it did, and then to trade Tyreek Hill, the depths of despair that we felt
It was a new
in
era.
that moment. It was tough, and then of course the Chiefs just came back and won the Super Bowl. So we can't expect that, but the parallels there are they're so dramatic that it's hard not to be excited about this, even if it is a sad day.
Absolutely. And like, I can't speak personally for how the guys in the locker room and the coaches and all that, how they've taken this last couple years, how they feel, all that. Obviously, they're their own. They've experienced this firsthand. We are only experiencing it, I would say secondhand, but it's like first and a half hand. We really do live right
Sure.
there with them, with every play and every. But like, they're the ones who have bared the brunt of being the number one target for everybody for years. And for us as Chiefs fans, like I was exhausted being a Chiefs fan. Like I was spent. It's not even that I didn't like it. I was just
100%.
out of gas. I was out of gas. And it, the break of just not having to care about playoff football and not have to like be in the bee's nest of the NFL playoffs and the
Mm.
and the the
Yeah.
the just chaos that goes on with when you're competing for a championship every time. It's refreshing. It's refreshing after 4 or 5 straight years of just every single January is just agonizing. And sometimes it's great, of course, but like it's a lot of emotional toll. And that's
It
as a
is.
fan, that's as someone like
Yeah.
us
Right.
that tracks the team and that loves the team, but that's not on the team. And
Right.
so I
Right.
just I can't imagine the type of toll that run took on the guys, especially the guys that were there the whole time, especially Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelsey, those guys, Chris Jones, all them. So yes, I think that this type of breath of fresh air, this type of just deep cleanse and just start back with a fresh mindset and with new energy and with just be the underdog again. Be the team that,
Mm.
just went 6
Yeah.
and 11 and missed the playoffs and then
Right.
now, you're going to go into the next year and everyone's going to be doubting you and saying the run is over and like but get that chip on your shoulder and see what happens because the whole like they're favored by every game they played, they were favored for so long. And every time you would look at the bets and it was always like, well, how can you bet against the Chiefs? Like that got old after a little bit. I hate to sound like, ungrateful or whatever, or pretentious about it, but like, this is a really good opportunity for this team to take another step.
Yeah, and like it helped obviously that while the Chiefs were not in the playoffs, everything came out very favorably for us as Chiefs
Helped a
fans, with
lot.
all the teams that we don't like losing in embarrassing fashion, and the teams that we
Firing their coaches
don't
and
care about or tolerate, winning the Super Bowl, eliminating some of our rivals, so on and so forth. Really helpful, really nice. But yeah, I mean, just to, it's not just about getting a chip on your shoulder, because they had a chip on their shoulder coming into 2025. I mean,
Mhm.
the one of the biggest chips you can have. They had a chip on their shoulder coming into 2022. Uh, but I think just getting a break
Yeah,
from living on the razor's edge 365 days a year for like 7 years in a
yeah,
row.
yeah.
It's got to be beneficial to the guys to get that break. They're going to be partying it up at Travis and Taylor's wedding here in a couple of months. Um, Hopefully, as Nick Wright likes to say, Mahomes will be dancing at the wedding and ready for week one and ready to go. But it really feels like there is a positive energy around the team that's surprising. I mean, surprising both because of how the season ended, and also because the energy when they traded Tyreek Hill 4 years ago was not positive at all. I mean,
Mhm.
like that, like I said, like I remember that day. We relive it
A
between you and
lot.
me frequently. We
Yeah,
pull the G chat messages from time to time. And
yeah,
today, like, I just gotten out of the shower and I checked my phone and I was like, oh my God, we traded Trent McDuffie. Oh, we got 4 picks, including a first rounder and a third rounder next year. Okay. Like, I
yeah.
love Trent. I love Trent,
Sweet.
but sweet. And this is something that probably needed to happen. And it feels like it opens up, this world of possibilities. And it sort of feels like, when I say that it's almost like the Family Guy bit, back when Family Guy was funny, like 20 years ago, the mystery box.
The
It
boat.
could even be a boat, blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
of
But
course.
like, you got 4 picks here. You got $11 million just from trading McDuffie in salary cap relief this year, and you don't pay him $30 million a year. Like, they have the opportunity to get 4 boats, out of this. The way that they
More
draft,
Trent McDuffies.
yeah, exactly. The way that they draft quarterbacks, who knows? One of those 6th round picks could be a Trent McDuffie.
Sure.
And the ninth overall pick. We haven't talked about this at all, but like, sure, maybe this is not the most talented draft class in the history of ever, but like, you're picking ninth overall. The highest the Chiefs have picked in the Mahomes era was when they traded up for McDuffie at 21, I think it was, in
Yes.
the 2022 draft.
Unless you count the
And
Mahomes pick as the Mahomes era,
sure,
but
right, exactly. But
but no, you're right.
that doesn't
21.
count.
Yeah.
And I mean, the difference between 9 and 21 in terms of the caliber of player you're able to grab, regardless of how talented the draft is, broadly speaking, is vast.
Yes. Massive.
It would be great if this was a year where 5 quarterbacks were going to go in the top 8 picks.
No kidding.
And sadly, that's not the case. There's going to be one. But it's interesting. There's a lot of interesting players out there. A lot of the more talented prospects, at the top of this draft are positions of need. Jeremiah Love,
Mhm.
I mean, like,
We need a running back, man.
I know, man. It just is like, does that everything that I know about analytics and running backs and all that stuff? It's like, oh, this probably would not be a good investment, but also it could actually be a pretty good
Oh,
idea.
look, the running backs don't matter thing. It makes sense in the macro scale. It makes sense from like a most of them don't matter because I think that's
Yeah,
probably analytically accurate.
right.
However,
90% of them probably don't matter.
yes,
95% of them probably don't
but
matter.
when you get the edge cases, you can't watch Bijan Robinson and tell me running backs don't matter. You can't watch Derrick Henry and tell me running backs don't matter.
Christian McCaffrey.
There are edge cases in the NFL of a super talented, super athletic superstar running back, and they absolutely matter. And Jeremiah Love, just because we've been talking about him, it looks like you can't ever guarantee anything in the NFL draft, but he sure looks like one of those dogs, one of those guys that's going to go out there and be an immediate difference maker. That's going to change an offense. That's whoever gets him, I'm pretty sure is going to love the pick. And people have asked him, who do you want to play with? Just
Yeah.
out of the blue, and he said, I want to play with the best quarterback. I'm not even going to say him, but you know who the best quarterback is. And then the breaking news is like Jeremiah Love wants to play with Patrick Mahomes. Like everyone understands what he's getting at. He wants to go to an offense that pops, and he wants to go somewhere that he can trust the offensive coaching staff and the quarterback and the guys around. How about the best offensive line, as far as maybe not analytically best, but like first round draft pick at left tackle, highest paid center of all time, highest paid right guard of all time, second round pick at left guard, and I mean, like they've invested in the line.
Whoever right tackle.
Whoever's
Yeah,
whoever's over there,
it's good offensive line regardless of who
it
it
is
is.
a good offensive line, and they've invested in it, and they have a quarterback that's won two Super Bowls, three Super Bowls, two MVPs, and they have a head coach that's, I mean, it just makes a lot of sense.
They
So
have a
I
new running back coach who had 2,200 yards from scrimmage 10
DeMarco
years
Murray,
ago,
exactly right,
Um,
and their offensive coordinator is a former running back. Like a
right,
lot of the stuff makes sense for a running back. Now, whether that is Jeremiah Love wanting to come play for the Chiefs, or whether that's a free agent, whether that's Travis Etienne,
right,
or Ken Walker, which would be
right,
insane, or like
right.
just some like splash running back. Like you've got to look at what the Chiefs are doing right now and think like, man, like I could go in there and actually make a difference and be a guy that, is an impact player. And I need it. I need it for my own sanity. I need it for like the last 3 or 4 years of watching Isaiah Pacheco. And I'm just over not having a running back that is any good at all. And I want one again. That I want Kareem Hunt, rookie Kareem Hunt. I want him back. I want a guy that they could throw a screen to and he can take it 60 yards for a touchdown. We haven't, I
Right.
mean, it's been Damian Williams since they had that. I need
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the good news is you won't have that long to wait to get a sense of what the plan is going to be. Because if Jeremiah Love is going to be on the table, they are probably not signing Travis Etienne next Monday,
Right.
which is when you would assume probably him, Ken Walker are going to sign. They're probably day one, day two, day three free agency guys
Mm-hmm.
because they're there at the top of the class. And that's less than a week away, buddy. So we're going to find out what positions the Chiefs kind of attack in free agency, what holes they try and fill before the draft, and that will give us a sense of who we might be looking at with pick number 9 and pick number 29. I know you're not a mock draft guy, and you were mocking them today
Mm-hmm.
for having to tear up all their mock drafts, but really it was they who had the last laugh because I can guarantee you they have all cranked out about 100 new mock drafts today with those extra picks. It's all part of the fantasy, bud.
God bless him.